The subject is the African real estate opportunities, real or perceived. And to lead us in our discussion and thought, Amelia Beattie, the Chief Investment Officer, Direct Property Investments from Stanlib. A warm welcome. You can touch the bell.
You said I can.
I lied.
While I wait for my presentation, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for being so kind to come back and listen to what we have to say about Africa. This week saw important milestones for two South African institutions and their time for Africa, and also illustrating their commitment to the continent. Today, as you would have read in the press, Sanlam listed their Africa Core Real Estate Fund on the stock exchange in Mauritius. And yesterday, we got our global trading license and incorporation for our Stanlib Africa Direct Property Development Fund. So I'm not exactly sure if it was planned to happen over these 2 days, but nonetheless, it might have meant to be to share with all of you that the African opportunities are real, and we don't have to say we're planning it. We can say we have these funds. Africa, the letters of the word Africa tells us the tale of the opportunities and help us guide through the much-spoken, complex and multitude of information to a simple understanding of what real estate in Africa is all about. Let's start with those people that drive a large part of the Africa property story, the aspirational emerging middle class. So I believe, and firmly so, that the opportunities in Africa are real. They're not just a perception. And through going through the word Africa, I will illustrate to you why we believe that and what makes us see these opportunities. Africa has a large consumer market, as you all know, and we've seen much research about that today. It's home to more than 1 billion people. The increased urbanization that we are seeing, 47% of Africans will live in cities by 2025. And it's those people that create these opportunities. The aspirational consumer market is one that we need to watch. Accenture did some research where they did some research into a whole number of different consumer profiles. The one that I want to share with you is what they call the rising striver. Typically, it's a 27-year-old father of two that's got a thriving taxi business. They live in the city and they have a second-hand car. Much of their income goes toward household needs, as much as 30% towards food. But he also has money at the end of the month for a new smartphone and a beer after work. And they are also very brand conscious and will always have more than 5 brand items in their range of clothing. So this market at the moment is around 100 million in people. It will double in size by 2016, and it will triple in size to close on $900 million of spending power. So that's a market to watch as we build our real estate on the continent. Also, as we see how this different consumer expenditures grow, it is important that the keys to success is the ability to focus on specific opportunity areas, develop differentiated, relevant offer that address substantial unmet needs. So get a share of the consumer wallet, and that therein lies the opportunity. The second letter of Africa is F, and we believe that it is because it talks about the fundamentals, and the fundamentals of supply and demand are very strong. There's a lot of fundamentals that I can go through, but I think today, from JP through all the other panels, a lot of those fundamentals have been dealt. So I want to use one example to illustrate why we believe that these opportunities are real. And I'll focus on the supply and demand fundamental. So in Africa, the property demand outweighs the supply significantly. There's massive retail shortage. There's a lack of higher grade quality office space. There's a deficiency of industrial space. There's an increasing need for warehousing and logistics centers as retailers enter the markets. There's a lack of good roads and public transportation, and that creates demand for housing near work locations. So there are opportunities in every sector of the real estate market. Let me take you through one example, and I'm going to focus on the city of Lagos because we'll spend the whole afternoon here if I have to go through more than one city. Jeremy spoke to us about densities in the population relative to retail space. I'm taking that one step down to city level. In Johannesburg, we have just over 1-to-1 square meter for every person living in the city. In Lagos, that number is 0.005 for every one person. Now Lagos, depending on what research you read, has got between 19 and 21 million people. If we adjust, and this I've done in collaboration with my dear friends at Actors who knows this market also very well. If you adjust that number for income, for the average income levels, assuming that you need 4 people in Nigeria to get about the same spending power as people in South Africa, that number then for Lagos goes to 0.2 square meters for every one person. What does that mean? That means the gap is some 3 million square meters of space that is required to service the market in Lagos. Now, we are conservative by nature, so let's cut that in half and say 1.5 million square meters. That, ladies and gentlemen, is 15,000 square meter centers plus another 25, 30,000 square meter shopping centers. In our property development fund that we are busy investing at the moment, we have $150 million of equity. That is enough for about 6 of that. So I promise you, we're not going to fall over each other's feet. And I also think investing in Africa, it will be hard to invest because of egos. Because it is just hard to do business there. So to go and build 80 and 90 square meter shopping centers right now, I think it will take some time before we get there. And what we like and what we believe will really service this market well is some smaller centers, because people live far away from where they work. The road transportation is poor, so they can't go to the regional mall every day to go and take their basket and buy all their stuff and take it home. They need to be be able to shop close to where they live. So these smaller centers will also work, and then there are always space for good quality regional shopping centers. Let's look at rewards. So we are in the business of investing for rewards. I guess we don't all do it because we love it. And it's still relatively difficult to measure the rewards and the returns that one gets in Africa. The Kenya REIT legislation is imminent, so soon we will get the Kenya REIT legislation will be promulgated, and we will be able to get that transparency so that we can get more information on the returns. IPD outside of South Africa only measure one country, and they recently launched the Botswana Property Index. And you can see there on the left that Botswana really produces great return. I think JP also spoke about that this morning. But the rest of the information is difficult to get, so it's still difficult to measure. Nonetheless, we believe that the underlying drivers are strong. If South African institutions are prepared to put their money into Africa, where risk-adjusted models by very clever actuaries drive the decisions that we take, and cost of capital are high, you know that when we invest and when Sanlam invests, it must be because we believe in the returns, and we believe in the returns for over the long term. Also, in Africa, the reward story really stands on the 3R legs. So returns are strong, as I said. Risks need to be managed, and I'm going to talk about risks in the one or two letters on. But thirdly, and perhaps one of the key reasons why investing in Africa produces good rewards, it is the best place and best opportunity for responsible investing. Most of the things that we do, because we build stock from the bottom up, we don't have to retrofit, we can do green. We can apply the green principles that we have learned and employing in our South African businesses on the continent. And we don't have Eskom to blame if there's no electricity. We don't have Mayor de Lille and Mayor Tau to call on when the light switch don't work. We have to create those electricity solutions ourselves. And it's a great opportunity to use the sun and use all the other resources that Africa provides us with to create green, sustainable investments. It also creates an enormous amount of jobs, and it creates new communities, it builds new cities, it builds new townships. So we are passionate about Africa, not only for the investment returns that it provides or the bricks and mortar, but for the difference that it makes to the lives of the communities in which it operates. We know that investing in Africa is not only investing capital. Yes, without capital, we for sure will not have any investment. But there are other things that are key. The picture on the left, I took out of the window of a car as we drove down the Badagry Expressway in Lagos. And it was just about as we went through the very deep hole in the road. And on the right-hand side is the road in front of one of the big 4 accounting firms, and you really have to swim to get to the front door. So infrastructure is poor, and without infrastructure investment, property investment will remain a perception, and we're going to struggle to make it a reality. But the picture looks so different every time you go back. 2 weeks ago, we were in Nairobi, and we got to stand in one of the buildings where Standard Bank is in, and it was quite high up, and we could look down on the new roundabout that has now been completed. 3 months ago, that was still a construction site with a lot of difficulty. Now it's a beautiful new road. Every time you go to Lagos, you can see how they demonstrably have changed another section to create that 10-lane highway. And you really see the difference that's made in infrastructure investment. In some research that's been done by Ernst & Young, you'll see that over 40% of capital invested in Africa up to February 2013 is in the transport and logistics center. And that really is a great story for the real estate industry, because it means that we will have good infrastructure going forward. It might be slow, but we have to be patient. We also require a different type of investment. We need an investment in time. If you are impatient and think you need to go in and make short-term money, you are going to get, you're going to have grief. You need to spend time on the ground walking the streets. You need to understand what is happening in those cities. You need to entrench yourself in the economic environment. You can't sit in Johannesburg in a boardroom and think you can send the instructions to Lagos or Accra or Kampala. You have to be there. And you also have to take time to understand how things work. You also need an investment in relationships and partnerships. Without it, Africa doesn't work, and the opportunities will never become real. Cultural translation is most important. You have to understand how each and every culture works, and they are not all the same just because they are all on the African continent. They each have their own unique little things that one needs to understand and learn and understand how those people want to be treated to be able to be successful. Partnerships are key, and relationships make or break deals. The C in Africa is for caution. It's not all about excitement. The opportunity to realize opportunities, we have to exercise caution. We've seen a lot today about the Transparency Index. This is the index about the ease of doing business in Africa. And you can see it's pretty dismal. It's hard to do business in Africa. And we have to continue to be aware of that and ensure that we understand those pitfalls. The list of risks are long. Political, currency, interest rate, lack of infrastructure, credibility of partners. One of the members on the panel, Fergus, will talk about the concern for availability of funding, bleak international perception, which we heard a lot about over the last 2 days, legal and contracting risks, bribery and corruption, inefficient policies, tax risks. This list is long. But let's put those aside, because we should all of us that want to play in Africa need to have people in our teams that are smart enough to help us mitigate those risks. Let me tell you what are the things that keep me awake at night and what I think we can do about them to ensure that we drive the opportunities. And land tenure is probably at the top of the list. If you don't have the rights to the land, there's very many cases where people 5 years after they built something found out that the land actually belonged to somebody else. So we believe the best way to mitigate the land tenure risk is to ensure that we create sustainable partnerships with the landowners where we keep them in the development during the development period so that it is as much in their interest to make it work as it is in ours. And surely they don't want to find out at the end that it didn't actually belong to them. Execution risk is another risk that I think will keep us occupied whilst we invest in Africa. I think it's easier to raise money to invest than to actually deploy that money in underlying projects. And those actors and R&B and those that's gone before us, they will tell you how true this is. We have to create partnerships again with service providers to make sure that we can deploy and build in time, that we don't have cost overruns, that we don't have time overruns, that we don't have poor quality investments, because if with those, our investment returns will just go down. The ease of distribution for tenants, I think, is another concern that we need to be cognizant of. And partnership with retailers are important, understanding where the retailers want to be and what they want in those countries. What is their critical mass, and can they get their stock there? Ladies and gentlemen, I appeal to you that we, as members of SAPOA, collaborate when we operate in Africa. Because through that collaboration and sharing of how we do things and how we can work together, we can mitigate some of these risks. The retailers tell us that they will only come into a country if we can provide them with 5 trading platforms. One investor can't do it on their own. If we can together provide them with more trading platforms, we have a better chance of attracting the South African and the international retailers into Africa successfully. There is very good reason that Africa starts and ends with an A. It is to remind us, if we want to make the opportunities come true, we need to take action. Ernst & Young did a recent business survey, and I think they sum it up perfectly. Assuming a half-glass full perspective that focuses first on opportunity and only then on the risks is what we need to action. Investing in building strong collaborative partnerships across government, business, communities, and with each other. Adopting careful long-term planning and patience. Be persistent and be flexible in implementing the plans, because we can be guaranteed they are going to change over time. And last, but perhaps most important of all, to celebrate, nurture, and develop Africa's human talent. It's arguably our greatest resource. We have to ensure that we drive the skills development in those countries. We take our own best people there to go and execute on the opportunities that we want to convert. And in embracing Africa's diversity, we will unlock these opportunities. So African real estate, is it only a perception? No, I don't believe so. Is it real? Yes. I believe that not from hearsay, not from reading research reports, but from being at the cold face of building relationships, forming partnerships, and negotiating deals almost on a daily basis. Let me tell you, it might be real, but it's not real easy. It is real hard. But it's our duty to take action to move it from perception to reality. Thank you.